Hi, my name is D. John Jackson, and my book is For Whom the Virus Tolls. And really the inspiration for that book started 2021 when I saw the death and the destruction and the things that were happening to our country. And I said, we got to write about this because there's so many parallels, there's so many levels to this, and there's so many different stories about people's lives. This is really about the shared humanity, individuals and what they're experiencing. And I said, I've got to write about it. I've got to capture this, if not for this period in time, for our posterity, so that they can look back and get an objective view of what really happened during this time. We hadn't faced anything like this since 1918 in the Spanish flu. And I actually highlight that. And I talk about the Spanish flu, and for most people, they didn't even realize what was the Spanish flu, what happened in 1918, over 100 years ago. And so I wanted to rekindle that and show that some of the same issues, some of the same attitudes, some of the same perspectives persist today. And there were a lot of things that were going on that were similar, but different. I think initially when I wrote the book, I thought the medical industry would be the most intrigued by it, specifically the people on the front lines, the doctors and the nurses. But as I started to write more and more, and I interviewed probably 150 people, I think it's apropos for a much, much broader audience, a general audience of individuals who can relate. Everybody knows someone who had a relative to pass away or had a friend to pass away, but they also know someone who experienced depression, or who experienced long COVID, or who's still experiencing some symptoms from COVID. I think if you're interested in humanity and you want to understand about what really happened and taking a mirror and looking back to something that most people want to forget, I think now it's a general audience. And it's not just the medical group, it's not just the folks who are in the scientific field, it's the average everyday citizen who can go back and say, wow, I never looked at it that way. And I never knew people were going through those type of issues. And now my perspective hopefully gives me a better vantage point in case something like this happens again, or in case something our children will experience, or at least we have a reference point. I wrote my first book back in 2021, and it was titled, What About Me? Walking the Tightrope as a Black Man in America. And I wanted to tell these unheard stories of what black men faced and what challenges they had in the corporate boardroom, or just working in a factory, or just existing, during a police stop or what have you. So I wanted to package that up, but that was just one of the stories. But as that started to blossom and evolve, I met so many people across the world who had interesting stories. And my goal was, how can I write these stories and get them out there for the public to see and hear, and maybe bring some camaraderie, bring people together, some empathy, some understanding. And by bringing people together, I think, again, if I know you better, if I understand more, it's a better world. And I think anytime you can get collaboration, and anytime that you can meet other like-minded people, it becomes a force. And so exposure is very, very, very key and very important. And you get great ideas. And I've always been a fan of collaboration. I think it's huge. And also when I talk to other writers, and I tell them about, I share what I'm doing, writing books and making movies and those kind of things. Those are difficult. And you need kind of a rallying point, somebody to say, hang in there, keep going. And that's just very important. So I've tried to do that. And I think anytime you have a community that's focused on that, it's a win-win. As well as the book, there's also a documentary film of the same title, For Whom the Virus Tolls. It'll be in theaters or streaming by July of this year, 2024. But it really gets into those human spaces and listens to stories, but then weaves together the same story as the book, the historical aspects of it, the scientific aspects of it, weaves it together and then asks questions. What did we learn from COVID-19? Is our society fractured? Is our thinking about science warped? Have we lost our sense of bearing? How do we come together? And if we can come together and get the facts and get understanding and be more about coming together and be more about understanding and be more about how do we look at challenges in a holistic sense together, then we're better off. We're much better off as opposed to splintering into groups and creating factions. So I hope the book is well received. The film from the first screening, first small screening, folks loved it. And we're having a major global premiere in May. So a lot of other folks are going to see it. And so we hope everything will go well.